that explores the intersection of media change and personal growth. I'm your host, Barbara Abel, and my calling is to help you tap into your superpowers, hone your message, and make an impact on the world. Today's episode is brought to you by these three words: rugged, resourceful, and resilient, which my two guests for this episode, the legendary producers Roni Selig and Marcie Mulé, say are the three R's required to build a sustainable and successful career. Rugged means being able to withstand difficult terrain like the rough and stormy world of media. Resourceful means being able to deal skillfully and promptly with the situation, creatively working within budget, making a winning dish out of the random items in your basket. And resilient, one of our favorite words here at Camera Ready and Abel, means being able to withstand and quickly recover, to spring back into shape after being bent or stretched out of shape, and keep going. Roni and Marcie are the principals in Ron Studios, an innovative company working on long-form documentaries, reality programming, digital campaigns, and live streams, including musical performances. Roni is a multi-Emmy award-winning producer whose credits span from Good Morning America to CNN, where she spent a decade as the executive producer for chief medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and she most recently launched a new digital platform for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Marcie is also a multi-Emmy award-winning producer, known for the hit series Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List, as well as numerous shows for Bravo, Lifetime, TLC, Food Network, MTV, and PBS, including The Real Housewives of Atlanta, The A-List New York, and Love and Hip Hop Miami. Welcome, Roni and Marcie. You two have a lot of Emmys.
We do, which is a great thing.
Pretty awesome. And for anyone listening and can't see video, I can see Emmys right now in the video.
Those are the Kathy Griffin Emmys right there behind me.
Congratulations. That's well earned. That's pretty exciting. So I have to say, first of all, it's thrilling to have you two on. I have worked with you individually over the years in your prior production world, so it's just such a pleasure. And so thanks for being here. But I also love these three words: rugged, resourceful, and resilient. So I want to ask you individually and collectively, how did you come to learn the value of these words?
Barb, it's so nice to see you.
Thank you, dear.
Roni, you've always used those words. You even used them once with my son when we were visiting you, and you were telling him about how you had to be. You were going through some changes, and he always remembered those three words as well, which are kind of great to tell to a young teenager who's got their life ahead of them. But certainly your definition, Barbara, was spot on, because you do have to be rugged to just this is a very physical business. I started out as a field producer, really, so I was traveling a lot and in the field and on location and climbing mountains and going under bridges and doing whatever we had to do to get the shot. And then, of course, producers have to be resilient and resourceful, because this industry bounces us around quite a bit. But I think Roni has a even bigger sense of the word rugged, because she's actually not just a television producer. She's a triathlete, and an Ironman triathlete, I must say, an Iron Woman. So you're really rugged. She's much more rugged than I am.
I really want to focus on the word rugged for a minute, because people don't understand how much stamina it takes to be talent. Until you said that, Marcie, I never thought about it. It's so true. How much stamina it takes to be a producer, and the physical takes a lot of stamina to be a chef. We just forget stamina is important. I'm going to throw that into the mix. But so now it's your turn, Roni. Talk to us about rugged, you iron person. Producer you.
Well, I fell into the Iron Man world by accident. And when I did my first race, which was not an Ironman, I just fell in love with the sport. And what I like about the sport, which basically, is parallel to the career track that I chose, is that you are kind of your own personal control freak. You have these three disciplines, swimming, biking, and running. And it is really up to you to push yourself to the extent that you can and want to. And with all your gear and all your training and everything that goes into it, it is under your control to a certain extent. And that builds this really insane endurance. And being in the business that we have chosen, you need a lot of endurance. I mean, I cannot tell you how many shoots or stories or locations I've been on where we didn't sleep for at least 3 nights in a row. We would go 72 hours without sleeping, breaking news and whatnot. And you really do have to, you can't just be awake, you have to be alert. And I think that what the endurance sport of triathlon and doing long distance races really gave me when I started in my 40s in this discipline, in this sport, it gave me this whole other level of energy. And getting up at 4:30 in the morning to train for year after year after year, at least 15 years, when I was living in New York City, it really just was a great training for the business. So I don't mean that everybody needs to be an Ironman, but for me and my personality and channeling my extra energy, it's really given me a lot of discipline.
Love that we're adding these extra words that we haven't thought about, but the endurance component, discipline, and then also something you just said, Roni, is we don't get to just be awake for 3 days. You have to be present and productive during that time when you're working in production. And I remember being, just a pup at VH1 back in the 90s, and we did overnight edits because we saved money that way, right? We were being resourceful in order to create. But funny enough, there's such happy memories because I loved the people we were with. There was such an esprit de corps. There was always unlimited amounts of, peanut M&Ms and things to keep you going overnight. Anyway, so I just want to go back to that ruggedness, that discipline, and the idea that it requires us, I should say, to be present. So, keep going with that because I still want to, no one's ever thought about it, but there's a rugged terrain.
Yeah. When, we did a story a couple years back when I was a senior executive producer for Sanjay at CNN. We did it was actually a documentary. It was called Saving the Twins. And it was about these beautiful boy brothers, conjoined, craniopagus means conjoined at the head. And the doctors in charge at Montefiore Hospital in Bronx were going to make an attempt to separate them. And this particular doctor, Dr. James Goodrich, had been probably one of the most notable and most experienced doctors, surgeons, neurosurgeons who had done these separations. And talk about, endurance and resilience. I mean, these guys had to stay awake for 27 hours on their feet doing surgery. And we were there with 360 cameras, with crews inside the operating room, and we were up for days. And then after the surgery, we had to quickly turn around the story for air. So that was another day. And so I think it was at least 3 nights that we did miss sleep. And it turned out to be the most unbelievable experience and the story that we brought to the world, which turned into a long form documentary as we followed the twins who did survive the surgery. It was very close, in that regard. I mean, they got to some places in the surgery where they didn't really know what to do, but they were able to get around these surgical issues. And I remember thinking, you've trained for this. And so now you're here, and we, sitting in an edit room and having to be sharp and having to remember what you saw because you didn't have time to screen all the footage. There's no time for that. It was literally take notes when you're in the operating room, get into the edit room and go. And those are the kinds of, like you're saying, with your VH1 memories, those are the kind of memories that stick with you for the rest of your life. And hopefully they're very, very good memories.
Roni and I met in Boston in 1986. We were both working for local channel there. What was it, Roni? WHDH?
Channel 7, WHDH, or NEV. Now it's HDH. Then it was NEV. Yeah, NEV.
NEV. So I'm sorry. So Roni and I met back in 1986 in Boston at WNEV television, the CBS affiliate in Boston at the time. And I remember you, Roni. I remember just seeing you fly through the hallways. You always had 3 people following you and a clipboard. And, you were just this this thing that was just moving around all the time. And I was like, who is that? And it was totally like, wow, she's so cool. And she's so busy. And she's doing like 50 things. And, we were young in our careers then. Right. So we became fast friends, in Boston. And we've been like dear friends ever since. And even though, she moved to New York, I moved to Hartford. Then I finally came to New York. And there was Roni. Once again, I was working on a nationally syndicated television show called Preview. It was on the air for 6 months and then it got canceled. And then this is my first job in New York City. So now I'm out, just jumped off the cliff without a parachute, right? And there's Roni once again staffing up a show at Lifetime, and she scooped up a whole bunch of us onto a new show there. And we probably got another year out of working, and as a freelancer, if you got a year of work ahead of you, you're good. So Roni's always been, I've always looked at Roni as being somebody who was all those 3 R's, rugged, resourceful, and resilient. And here we are now, after many years of both of us working in our careers, coming together as Ron Mar Studios. And I don't want to cry on a podcast, but I can't tell you how just honored I am to be in this position to work with somebody like Roni, who has had just an amazing career, and I bring what I bring, and I feel like I've had an amazing career as well. And now to the two of us are going to take what we have together and go try to make an impact out there, and we'll see how we do. I can't imagine that we can't do great things together.
Marcie,
I love
that's
that.
so nice. Got me choked up. Well, obviously, Barb, the feeling is mutual because we have complementary skills. Barb, she had her own company, and it was something that I said I would never fucking do. I would never start my own company. It was just a layer of complication that was just too hard for me. And I put everything into all my various positions. And I just thought, I can't even imagine having to do all of the business aspects on top of this without an executive in charge of production. And, having to do that myself. And Marcie does it all. And so we wouldn't have a company if it wasn't for Marcie, frankly. That's the truth.
Well, I believe you, but I also want to say thank you, because that was one of my next questions, because partnering is wonderful, but it's also challenging in a bunch of different ways. It's being it's truly a work marriage. So I wanted to ask you about your individual strengths. Like, how do you identify, along with the 3 R's of Ron Mar Studio, what are your individual strengths and how do they play together? So one we know now is that Marcie is the executive in charge of production.
Yes, and I'm the PA. I go to the post office all the time, and Marcie's doing all the billing and the invoicing, and I'm like running for props and catering. But I think our individual talents. I mean, what is so cool is that I've spent so much time in editorial and writing and managing. And ideating ideas and concepts and formats and all of that for all the various people I worked for. And from from when Marcie and I started working together, I mean, Marcie is a production animal. I mean, she can direct, she can produce, she can light, she can edit, she can do all of those things on top of being a great writer. So we have these two various above the line and below the line skill sets. And where we come together as writers. So the most fun we have is when we're on shared Google Docs and we are writing together. We wrote this whole, this huge PSA campaign that launched during COVID. It's seen all over the country on local stations and the network. CBS aired them on the network, and they were called Unite to Prevent. We did it with a 501c3 foundation, not-for-profit, and we got to create these from whole cloth, from nothing. And it was really a special experience, not to mention they've been seen over 750 million times and hopefully have saved some lives, which is really important. But it's so cool how we know what each other's skill sets are, and we can pick up the slack but yet there's almost an unspoken language about this partnership. And I can't imagine any other person that would put up with my shenanigans and what I don't know, especially when it comes to technology, than Marcie.
Well, what's really great is we had one of our associate producers who worked with us paid us the biggest compliment. And she said, you guys almost like share a brain. Like you look at something and you both have, you instinctively have almost the same thoughts about it, but yet you both bring something a little bit different to the table. And so the new word I want to throw into the mix is trust. And I trust Roni's creative instincts and she trusts mine. So there's no arguing over anything. It's like, you know what? You really think that works? Then it works. It's like there's no reason to have to go back and forth. I don't know. And if we don't agree, on those then we talk it through and we come up with what's going to be the best thing for the story that we're trying to tell or the content that we're creating. But we've both been around the block so many times and in those edit rooms and long nights and putting the best foot forward and working for big people like Bravo and CNN. And we know how to make the product the best that it could be, but it really does come down to trusting each other and trusting our own instincts. So if we can't do that at this point in our careers, then what could we do? So that's the new word I want to throw into the mix is trust.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That is an underrated word in the space, and how important that is. As you said that, Marcie, was going through my head how important it is to, from my position to be able to trust the network or trust the opinions of people above, trust people to execute, trust people to be good to their word and the integrity. And then when you have that, it's such a palpable feeling. And you're right. I don't think we ask ourselves that enough. We look at budgets or opportunity. I meant the sparkly stuff, which is really easy to get distracted by, and miss the heart and soul stuff that really matters. So how does this inform now your work at Ron Marr Studios? Like, how does this inform choices you make around content? How are ways, especially creating a business during the pandemic, I think is when you partnered, correct? Or had you started before? Right. So it tapped into a certain, that was rugged terrain to begin with. The media business is in such crazy, I don't know if the free fall is the exact word, but maybe it's very volatile right now. And then on top of it, the need to be resourceful. So I was curious, out of all of those, dive in anywhere where like that's really shown up for you too since starting your company.
We'll move to the next word for me, which is resourceful. And, here I was, having left CNN, and I took a short stint to kind of take a break from TV and was an executive director for a not-for-profit called Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. And I'd never been an executive director, but I figured it out. And I worked for these amazing women for PAVE, Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. And they gave me the opportunity. And during that time, when the pandemic hit, I got a call from my old boss at CNN, John Klein, who originally hired me to be, head of the health and wellness medical unit, and said, I have a project and I'd love you to work on it. We want to do a 24-hour non-stop live global, streaming event with Tim Shriver and Oprah Winfrey. And the Call to Unite was born. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in the situation where we are digital streaming entrepreneurs. And all of a sudden we are the people who are helping all of these organizations get their content, onto online, onto air, all from our homes. And we figured it out really quickly. And I remember, the night of the Call to Unite, where I'm sitting in my den and I've got, my computer up there and I see Oprah Winfrey in this little box. I mean, it was basically a digital control room on my computer where I'm like watching everything going on and on comms with the producers in different places all over the country, all over the world. It was, I get the chills talking about it. It was so fascinating. And that gave us an opportunity to think differently about how content can be distributed. And people needed needed to have content coming. They were stuck now in their homes, and they needed content to be constantly coming in. So that's when our business was really born, and we got the chance to have a bunch of clients who came forth wanting to have their organizations put on concerts virtually, and other other programs. And so we were very fortunate that this particular time in history gave us some creative parameters of which we had to adapt to. And so by being resourceful, you adapt to whatever it is that you are given. And if you don't have those other resources, you use what you have. And that's what we did. And you have and you have to be willing to fail, which we certainly are, and we certainly have in our careers from time to time. And we take risks. So with being resourceful, you take risks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we actually did a virtual Rosh Hashanah for an organization called Jubilong, and that was, I think, the first one, right, Ronnie? And we had to get celebrities to do readings and all this, and we put together like it was over an hour, like a 90-minute virtual Rosh Hashanah, which was really fun to work on. We even did a live play reading with Judy Gold. So it was just interesting stuff. Like suddenly people had this need, right? And for the Young People's Chorus, they lost their stage. So we took them out on location on rooftops and in front of Lincoln Center instead of inside of Lincoln Center. And we were out doing the first like COVID safe shoots after the pandemic. And then finally they got their stage back. So they kind of don't need us anymore, but it's okay because now we're evolving the business, and, we're always trying to find people who have interesting content needs, because we really do want to make an impact and move the needle as best we can. And by the same token, we're developing, for cable and for the streamers, and always looking for interesting talent. And that's why we always call you, and looking to do different things, but not just rely only on, selling shows to cable or the streamers, but also finding interesting little niches where people need creative content. That PSA campaign, the COVID PSA campaign we did for the Cura Foundation was really interesting and fun to do, because we suddenly had to write these, 60-second spots, which we never really did. And we had a good time doing that and engaging major celebrities, from Josh Groban to Steve Harvey to
The Office, the cast.
yeah, we got 3 people from The Office to come back together for a Back to the Office, which is still running now. I mean, because people are still going back to the office in some way, shape, or form. So we've been lucky, and now we just have to. So there's another word. You always need a little luck, right? You have to be at the right place in the right room, selling the right idea at the right time. And I know everybody in the industry knows that one for sure.
Our bread and butter really is content creation, whether it's content for a television audience. I mean, we obviously are unscripted in terms of, we're not dramatic or comedy writers. That's not our business, but we do nonfiction content. And whether it be for an organization like, for example, Dr. Sanjay Gupta and his partner Mark Hodesh have this conference happening on May 31st at the Del Coronado in San Diego called Life Itself. It's their first big health conference. And they called us, I don't know, I guess it was last year in the summer, to come up with ideas to do videos for their conference. And so our videos are now going to be airing on this massive LED wall that we're actually going to be able to see in person, which is very fortunate for us, with, some of the biggest names. We did a video with Tony Fauci. We did a video where Marcie and I had a career high where we directed Brian Grazier and Norman Lear from Norman's house in California. And there we were on Zoom with a camera person there and Mark, the founder of the organization. And we're giving directions to Norman and Brian, and they're saying, was that good enough? Was that a good take? It was insane. And, when would you have ever thought that we would have that opportunity? And it came out so great. People can see all these videos online, by the way. I mean, they're all there. They just have to Google lifeitself.org, Norman Lear or Fauci or Sanjay, and Paul Stamets, the mushroom guy. I mean, Goldie Hawn. We did all these videos we produced for them. And those are the kinds of things that we love doing, in addition to doing the traditional, whether it's reality programming or docu soap kind of programming. And we just finished a conference, a health conference in Lake Nona, Florida, for the Tavistock organization. They have something called the Lake Nona Impact Forum. And it's a gathering of all of these incredible people in technology and health and medicine and wellness. And we produced videos for them, but we actually executive produced the whole conference, all the editorial that all for all the sessions, the plenary sessions that took place. And that just takes me back to my my health writing and my medical writing days. And it was also extremely rewarding, and the people that we got to meet was unbelievable. So we really want to be doing things, like Marcie said, that move the needle, that can help people, help children, help families. I love the health space. It's only changing and growing day to day. And so we definitely, if somebody said, well, do you have a specialty? I would definitely say, health content is definitely a specialty of ours.
So you talked a lot right there about transferable skills, but the big thing is the fourth R is risk. So you took a risk to decide to step out of your comfort zone and go into business for yourself with a very dear friend, which, by the way, is super risky. Friends working together is a risky proposition, and you guys are making it work. And then leaning into risk by creating content. You knew you were great at creating content, and you realize it's the delivery system is not insurmountable. That's just about learning some details. This is such a powerful message that you're sharing. But I love it because many of us shrink from that risk because we don't trust ourselves, whatever that is. And we say, no, I don't know that, so I'm going to stay in my box. I think this is amazing because it's so much about the fourth R. You take risks. So I wonder too, have you ever thought about that consciously, and also what it is, because often when the more successful we become, there's a tendency to become risk averse because it's so much about maintaining, right? Not necessarily growing. I don't know if you've experienced that yourselves.
Well, I've always been, a risk taker because I'd rather be in control of my life and the way that I work than not. I've had a few staff jobs, where I've had to conform, but the majority of my career has been as a freelancer or a company owner, because without risk, there's very little reward. And I know when I look at people up there on the Oscar stage or the Emmy stage, and certainly we've both been there, but to look at when you feel so good about completing something and that it is acknowledged by the industry, or it's a hit, or it's talked about, none of those things could happen without taking risks and without believing in your own ideas and abilities to see it through. And that's what our business is, that we're a bunch of risk takers. We're a bunch of people who have something burning inside of us that we have to get out. And in the meantime, we'll do XYZ to get there. But this is what we're made of. When I was a kid, I was writing plays and bringing all the kids down into my basement. My father was a school teacher, so he used to bring home all these old desks, and I could line them up like a classroom. And I'd have play readings for plays that I wrote. I don't think they were very good, but but that's what I was doing when I was like 10, so it's like, when it's in you, and you can't deny it. So, you might as well have a good time trying.
That's really funny, Marcie. I never knew that story, because when I was 10, I produced a carnival, a Rex Trailer Boomtown Carnival at the end of G Street in Hull, Massachusetts, which is the same street that my husband lived on, and told me he remembers coming to my little goofy carnival. And I remember thinking of all the things I was going to produce for this carnival, the different like, vendor kind of things, between the bobbing of the peaches or the apples or the coin toss or whatever. It was very, it was a full production for charity. So that's really funny.
Honored that I could have provided a platform to share these stories that are incredible. So what haven't you done that you want to do?
Well, let's see. I think the one that got away for me is my grandmother was a survivor of the Armenian genocide, and her story of survival is nothing short of a Dr. Zhivago-esque movie. And I wrote when I was 20. What was I? 26 or 7. Right when I moved to Boston. Actually, I wrote an outline, and I heard that Cher was in town, and Cher is half Armenian, so I thought, well, maybe she'll make the Armenian movie. And I put it in an envelope, and I delivered it to her hotel. I think she was in town making the Witches of Eastwick or something like that, because it was like the late '80s. And about 2 months later, I got a rejection letter signed by Cher. So she got it, but I guess like I never like I was like, oh, I can't do this. I'll never make this movie. This movie, unfortunately, there's been so many more stories, since then, and there's been a few attempts, some big good movies made by our other Armenians. But I guess I wish I always maybe pushed a little harder on that and learned how to write a screenplay and wrote it. And, it's a daunting task for sure, but people do it, right? I mean, people do it. But then you get wrapped up in your career and you're very busy and you're this and that. It's like, I can't write a screenplay right now. I've got to like get the show on the air tomorrow, so it's not like but if I could have a do-over, I would go back to that time and stick with it to do it. So that would be it. That would be my do-over.
Roni, do you have a do-over?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know where it would have taken me. I think that I might have not had taken as many executive jobs as I had. That those middle management jobs, for as much authority that they give you, or they look on the outside looking in, that they have all this glamour or prestige, whatnot, you're not really making anything. You're hiring other people to try to execute ideas that either you have or that they have. And I remember at Lifetime, when Marcie brought up the Lifetime, I had my first opportunity to go up the ranks. I was 28 years old, and I had been producing this show called Attitudes on Lifetime, which was, kind of a cultish kind of a hit.
Okay, I loved Attitudes. Can we just have it? Yeah, we have to have an Attitudes moment. When I first moved to New York, I went to a live taping of Attitudes and was like total fangirl.
Yeah, no, it was a great show. I did not create it. I cannot take any credit for creating it, but I was a producer that came in to maintain it and bring it along and hopefully get more viewers. And I remember that my boss at the time, who was the vice president of programming, was leaving, and she tapped me to replace her and said, we can find another person to produce Attitudes. You need to come into the executive suite and come up with other ideas. And, I did all that. But as I went along in my career, I realized that I am definitely a hands-on producer. I like getting my hands dirty. When I wasn't joking before when I said, once a PA, always a PA. It doesn't matter what level you are at as an executive producer or senior executive producer. If you're not willing to go run and get Regis Philbin coffee, as I oftentimes did for him, God rest his soul, loved that man. It's part and parcel of digging your heels in and, with jumping in with both feet and getting your hands dirty and all of that stuff. So I think that would have been maybe my do-over, that maybe I would have just stuck more to just kept producing and coming up with other ideas or staying on that track maybe.
Oh, Roni, that's it. You just summed it up in a nutshell between the two of you of what it takes and what it is. And at the heart of all that, there's so much passion that you two have shared today. And it's, I think, Marcie, as you described, it's, the fire in the belly and the stories that you have to get out. I can't thank you enough. This is really great. Any final words? Is there anything I didn't ask that you're dying to share with me?
I think that for me, final words are for people who are thinking about going in the business. Just be original and be yourself, and trust your instincts, and take the risks, and try to have your side projects. Even if you're fully engaged in a 100-hour work week job, still try to have your side projects that are your passion projects, that you might get lucky one day and be able to produce that documentary short. I mean, when I watch the Oscars myself and I see people winning Oscars for documentary shorts, I'm like, oh, yes, that is what I want to try to get us one of those. But, we'll see. Time will tell. There's lots of time to think about ideas, and maybe somebody will tap us on the shoulder and say, I have an idea, or we'll find a great story, and we'll be able to bring things to life.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to find a something to do, a doc short. That would be fantastic. I will just say in closing that I'm just not done yet. I'm just not done. So there's a lot more stories to tell. There's incredible issues going on right now that I care a lot about. The Equality Act is something that I care a lot about, where half our country has anti-trans and anti-gay legislation on the books. I want to do something about that. I want to make programming around that. And there are other issues as well that I care a lot about. And I've had fun with the Housewives. I had fun with Kathy Griffin. I had fun with a lot of the shows that we did at Picture This Television. And if I don't do those kinds of shows again, it's okay, as long as I do something in these other realms that makes an impact and that makes a statement. It uses the power of the medium to inform or entertain or enlighten people. And that's why I am not done.
Amen to that. Thank you both so much. And thank you for listening to Camera Ready and Abel. Please visit abelintermedia.com and download my free ebook, 12 Tips for Success on Camera. And as always, please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.